That night was the craziest, yet somehow the most important night of my life. It was a quiet Friday when it happened. I lay on my back, staring at the soft patterns of moonlight shifting across the ceiling. My thoughts were restless and scattered. I felt alone. Luna, my wife, had flown overseas to stay with her mother for a couple of months. It had already been 3 weeks since I'd seen her. The silence in the house was thick, almost peaceful, until I heard the soft creak of the bedroom door. I sat up, squinting into the shadows. My 19-year-old son, Alex, stood there. His broad shoulders were outlined in the dim light from the hallway. He hesitated, one hand braced on the doorframe like it was the only thing holding him together. "Dad," he said quietly, his voice uncertain. I rubbed the sleep from my eyes. My chest tightened at the tone in his voice. "Alex, what's wrong?" He didn't answer at first, just stood frozen in the doorway. Then, slowly, he stepped into the room, his bare feet barely making a sound on the carpet. There was something different about the way he moved, hesitant, nervous, like he was bracing for something. "I couldn't sleep," he murmured. I glanced at the clock. 2:14 a.m. Alex wasn't the kind to wake me unless something was seriously weighing on him. I sat up more fully and motioned for him to come closer. "What's going on?" I asked gently. He hesitated before sitting on the edge of the bed. His shoulders were tense, hands clasped tightly in his lap. He didn't look at me. I waited in silence. "Alex," I said softly, "you can talk to me. Whatever it is, I'm here." He let out a shaky breath. His fingers fidgeted with the hem of his t-shirt. It's hard to explain," he said finally. "I've been feeling different, and I don't know what to do about it." A wave of worry passed through me. "Different how?" I asked, keeping my voice calm. He looked up at me then. His eyes were searching mine with a kind of raw vulnerability I hadn't seen in years. "It's about someone," he said. "Someone I've been thinking about. A lot." Relief flickered through me. Maybe this was about a girl at school. A crush, maybe? "Okay," I said with a small smile, trying to keep things light. "Is it someone from school?" He shook his head slowly, his gaze dropping again. "No," he whispered. It's not someone from school." I leaned forward, gently, but a strange unease started to creep into my chest. "Then who?" I asked. "You can tell me." He took a deep breath, like he was gathering every ounce of courage he had left. When he spoke again, his voice trembled. "It's not about a girl," he said, barely louder than a breath. "It's not a phase. I think I know I'm gay." For a second, I couldn't speak. The room was quiet again, except for the sound of our breathing. His words hung in the air, fragile and heavy. I swallowed hard, my mind racing. Not with judgment, but with how much fear must have been living inside him, waiting to be heard. "Alex," I started, my voice soft. He stood up suddenly, pacing the room like a storm had broken inside him. "I know how it sounds," he said quickly. "I know it might change everything. But I've tried to hide it, Dad. For years. I've tried to push it down, pretend I was someone else, but I'm tired of pretending." I watched him, my heart pounding. Not with fear, but with the weight of what this moment meant to him. "Alex," I said, rising slowly, "you're my son. I love you. Nothing you tell me can change that." He froze, turning to me, his face pale and eyes shimmering with tears. "But what if you look at me differently now?" he asked. "What if I lose you?" I stepped closer and put a hand gently on his shoulder. "You won't," I said firmly. "You won't lose me. Not ever." He stared at me for a long moment, eyes wide with disbelief. And then, finally, he let out a breath that sounded like he'd been holding it for years. "I didn't know how to tell you," he whispered. "I was so scared." "I know," I said, pulling him into a hug. "But I'm proud of you for being honest, for trusting me." His arms wrapped around me, and for a long while, neither of us spoke. The silence no longer felt heavy, felt safe. "You're not alone in this," I said quietly. "We'll figure it out together." "I don't want to lose you, Dad," he said again. his voice barely audible. "You won't," I whispered back. "You never will." That night was one of the strangest and most quietly electric nights of my life. It was a quiet Friday when it happened. I lay on my back, watching moonlight shift in faint patterns across the ceiling. My thoughts were restless, scattered. The house felt too big, too quiet. My best friend, Matt, had flown out to Europe months ago for work, and his son Eli, 20 now, had been staying in the guest room while finishing up a semester nearby. I hadn't seen Matt in weeks, but Eli was here every day, and I was beginning to realize how much space he'd started to occupy. Not just in the house, but in my thoughts. I didn't notice the creak of the door at first, but when I turned, half asleep, there he was, standing in the doorway, backlit by the soft hallway light. His silhouette was tall, broad-shouldered, and still somehow hesitant. "Hey," he said quietly. "You awake?" I sat up, rubbing the sleep from my eyes. "Yeah, everything okay?" He shifted on his feet, like he wasn't sure why he'd come in at all. "I don't know. I couldn't sleep." I glanced at the clock. 2:14 a.m. Something in his voice felt off. "You want to sit?" I asked, pulling back the blanket slightly. He nodded and stepped in. The sound of his bare feet on the hardwood was soft but deliberate. He climbed onto the edge of the bed, quiet. I turned back under the sheets, giving him space. "You okay?" I asked after a moment. He didn't answer right away, just stared at the floor, his fingers running along the hem of his shirt. Finally, he said, "I've been thinking about stuff lately, a lot, and I don't know what to do with." I looked over at him. His jaw was tight, his shoulders drawn inward. "What kind of stuff?" He paused. "Stuff that probably sounds crazy. Stuff I haven't told anyone." "Eli," I said gently, "you don't have to be afraid to talk to me. I've known you since you were a kid." "That's the problem," he muttered almost to himself. The silence between us stretched, thick with something unspoken. Then he turned to me. "It's about someone," he said. "Someone I think about more than I should." I tried to keep my voice calm. "Someone from school?" He shook his head slowly.
No.
"Someone here." A sharp pulse ran through my chest, but I kept still.
Any.
"I know how this sounds," he said quickly. "And I know it's messed up, but I've tried to ignore it. I've tried to stop thinking about it, but every time I'm near you, I feel." He trailed off. The look in his eyes told me the rest. I took a slow breath, searching for something to ground me. "Eli, I care about you," I said carefully. "You're Matt's son. You're like family to me." He nodded. "I know. That's what makes this so hard." I didn't say anything for a moment. My chest was tight, my thoughts tangled. I hadn't expected this, not from him. And yet, "I'm not confused," he said, voice low but firm. "I know how I feel, but I also know it's not something you'd ever act on. I just needed to say it once, so I could stop pretending." I reached out, resting my hand lightly on his arm. "Thank you for trusting me," I said. "That takes a lot. And I hear you." He looked at me then, eyes glassy but calm, vulnerable, steady. "I'll be okay," he said, smiling faintly. "I just needed you to know." We lay there in silence for a while, both of us looking up at the ceiling like the answers might be written in the shadows. Eventually, I said, "You want to stay in here tonight? Just to sleep. Might help." He nodded slowly. "Yeah, I think it would." He slid under the covers beside me, leaving a careful space between us. I turned onto my side, facing away, but not before I noticed the quiet relief in his eyes. "Good night," I murmured. "Night," he whispered. The silence that followed was heavy, but not unbearable. It was the kind that held something unspoken, fragile but honest. And as he closed his eyes beside me, I felt something stir in my chest. Hope, fear, and the sense that this wasn't over. That night nothing happened, but something had changed. And deep down I knew. I tried to keep my voice steady. What matters is doing the right thing. And this isn't right. Eli sighed, running a hand through his hair. I know you think that, he said. But what if it is? No, I said, cutting him off gently but firmly. There's no what if here. We're not going to have this conversation again. He stared at me, his eyes full of frustration. And something else. Sadness. You're scared, he said finally. Yes, I admitted. I am. But not for the reason you think. It's not just about you or me, Eli. It's about what we risk, what we could ruin. But that wasn't the whole truth. What terrified me most was that I had started feeling something too. He didn't respond. The silence between us stretched, heavy and unbearable. Then, without a word, Eli stood. His movements were stiff, deliberate. I'm going for a walk, he muttered, heading for the door. Eli, wait. But he was already gone. The hours crawled by. I sat by the window, watching the rain gather on the glass, my heart thudding louder than the storm outside. When the door finally creaked open close to midnight, I rushed to meet him. He stepped in, drenched and quiet. Where were you? I asked, my voice rough from waiting. You could have gotten sick. Just needed some air, he replied, brushing water from his hair. I handed him a towel from the bathroom. You can't just disappear like that. He dried his face, sighing. I needed to clear my head. Did it help? His eyes flicked to mine. Not really. Something in his tone made my chest ache. I stepped a little closer. Eli, I said, softening my voice. We can't keep going like this. It's tearing both of us apart. I know, he whispered, but I don't know how to stop. Maybe we need help. A counselor, maybe? He let out a hollow laugh. A therapist? What would I even say? Hi. I think I'm in love with my dad's best friend. They wouldn't judge, I said, even though I wasn't entirely sure. They'd help you make sense of this. He dropped the towel to the floor. His voice came out low and firm. No one can fix this. No one can change how I feel. The words hit harder than I expected. Because, deep down, I wasn't sure I wanted him to. But I didn't say that. Not yet. The next few days blurred by in silence. We moved around each other like strangers in the same house, each of us pretending the other wasn't breaking inside. Then one night, after dinner, while I was loading the dishwasher, Eli stood behind me, arms crossed, eyes unreadable. Dad's flying back next week, he said. I need to tell you something before he does. I froze. What is it? I can't do this anymore, he said, his voice trembling. I can't keep pretending everything's fine. Eli, I said, turning to face him. We've already talked about. No, he said, cutting me off. You don't get it. I can't shut it off. I've tried. He stepped closer, his voice cracking. I need you to see me, to understand how much this is breaking me. My own voice faltered. I do see you, Eli, every day, and it kills me to watch you hurt like this. But I don't know how to fix it. You can't fix it, he said. But maybe you don't have to. He moved toward me, his hand brushing mine. The contact was brief but electric. My breath caught, and I stepped back.
No, y whispered.
We can't go there. His face twisted, pain bleeding through every line. I'm sorry, he said, turning and walking away. I stood frozen, heart pounding, because the truth was, something in me had answered that touch. That night I couldn't sleep. I replayed everything. His words, his eyes, that fleeting touch. It wasn't right. I knew that, but denying what I felt didn't make it go away. The next evening, I was in the living room, pretending to read. Eli hovered in the doorway. Can I come in? He asked softly. Yeah. He didn't sit, just paced a little, then stopped in front of me. I don't want you to think I don't care, he said. I do. More than you know. I know, I said. That's why this hurts. Because no matter how much I want to let it go, I can't. He took a deep breath. Have you ever thought about it? He asked. About us? If things were different? I hesitated, my heart thudding. Eli, don't lie, he whispered. Just tell me. I looked down at my hands. I've thought about it. I admitted. But that doesn't mean it's something we can act on. He nodded slowly. I just needed to know. We sat in silence for a while. He didn't ask for more, and I didn't offer it. But the tension never left the room. Not that night. Not for a long time. Eli started spending more time outside. He reconnected with friends he hadn't spoken to in months. Picked up old hobbies, photography, hiking, even playing guitar again. It looked like he was healing. And maybe, in a way, he was. I threw myself into routine. Folding laundry, watering plants, cooking meals no one asked for. There was a strange comfort in the monotony. Like if I just kept moving, I wouldn't have to stop and feel. But the truth? As much as we tried to move forward, something lingered. It wasn't something we spoke about, not directly. Not after that night in the kitchen. Not after the quiet exchange where we both admitted more than we should have. It was just there. This quiet tension. Like an invisible thread binding us together. Pulling tight every time our eyes met across the room. Sometimes I caught him looking at me. Not like before, not with desperation. But with restraint. Like he was holding himself back for my sake. And sometimes, late at night, I wondered if I was doing the same. I still haven't told his father. My best friend. The man who trusted me enough to take care of his son while he was abroad. I still haven't told my wife. And I don't know if I ever will. Not because I'm hiding, but because I don't know what to say. What do you call something that's never supposed to happen, but somehow feels inevitable? What do you do when love shows up in the wrong form, at the wrong time, in the wrong person, and yet you feel it anyway? I'm telling this story not because I'm proud of it. Not because I've made peace with it. But because it happened. And I can't pretend it didn't. Maybe you'll judge me. Maybe you won't. But if you've ever felt something you couldn't name, something forbidden but real, you'll understand why I can't forget it. Even now, with space between us and silence stretching longer each day, I still feel that thread. And I don't know where it leads.